Welcome to our Lil Red Dress Project lesson. Here is a list of your mandatory supplies that you'll need and optional. For more information, find us on Facebook at Lil Red Dress Project. Find the pattern for our dress at lilreddressproject.ca, and if you'll notice, we will be starting with a red and white bead, which is the widest point on the dress. Slide your beads down to the end of your thread, keeping about 1 inch to 1.5 inches at the end. And then you're going to go back up just through the red bead to start with, pulling your thread all the way through so that both of your beads are side by side. And then you're going to take your needle and you're going to go back down through the white bead in the opposite direction of where your thread is coming out. And now again, you're going to go up through the red bead, the opposite direction of the way that your thread is coming out, and pull it tight. From there, you're going to take your needle and you're going to go back down through the white bead in the opposite direction of where your thread's coming out. And you're going to repeat this process, following the pattern, putting 10 more red beads on before you get to the end and putting another white and a red. Keep on going with a single bead, going down in the opposite direction of where the thread is coming out of. So you can see I'm going down through the white bead, and the thread is coming out from the bottom of it, so I'm going in the opposite direction. You'll notice that your thread, once you put one bead on, will come out through the second to last bead. So you'll see the thread was coming out from the white bead, now you want it to be coming out from the end red bead. So you go back up that bead in the opposite direction, and this is called a brick stitch. And so when you pick up your next red bead, you're going to go through the red bead in the opposite direction of where the thread's coming out, pulling until it's tight. It'll pull that bead snug next to it. Again, you'll notice your thread is coming out the second to last bead. So you're going to go back through the end bead in the opposite direction of which way the thread's coming out. You may notice that with your beadwork, some of your beads may be a little bit further apart and it might feel a little loose. You can use your thumbnail to push them together a little bit and give a tug on your fire line to bring them back together. But don't worry too much about them being loose, because when you go to the next level on your beadwork, it'll help tighten everything up. And if you over tighten it, it'll end up being very curvy and wavy in the end. So don't worry too much. And honestly, if you're a beginner beader, you will try this pattern a few times before you get it. I know personally that I tried it at least 3 or 4 times before I finally figured it out. Double check that you have 10 red beads in the center. If you do not, make sure to add on another 1 or 2 wherever you are in the pattern. Then you will be adding on 1 more white bead and 1 more red bead to finish the widest part of the dress. From there you can work your way down to the bottom and then work your way back up, and I'll show you that part in a moment. Double checking that you have your 14 beads in your widest row on your dress, you will be moving on to the next row. Following the pattern online, you will notice that you'll be adding a red and a white bead. How you do this is that you are looking for the bridges that are in between your beads. So when you connected that string of beads, you created these little bridges or rainbows. Your needle's going to go underneath that bridge where those 2 beads are connected, and you'll see in a moment it'll slide through. And when you do that, your thread will be pulled through that bridge, and that's what holds them down. So pull it tight, pulling those beads down. Now you're going to go back up just through the white bead. And then once you get through that single white bead, sorry, it's a little out of focus there, pull the thread all the way through, and then you're going to go down the red bead. Now this is the trickiest part about doing this dress, so do it a couple times if you need to. Down through the red, pulling all the way through, and then back up through the white bead. Now doing this creates a stitch where you do not see any stitches on the outside of your dress. It tacks down those first 2 beads. You can see I got a little tangled for a second there. Pull tightly. Just make sure that the thread didn't wrap around the bottom. Make sure that it just wrapped around those 2 beads that you just tacked on. Now you're going to take another white bead following the pattern, and you are going to put that one on the next bridge. So going through that next bridge, you can see it's right there between the 2 red beads. Now you're going to pull all the way through, and once you do that, it's going to pull that white bead down. Now you go back up through just that 1 white bead, and once you pull it all the way through, you'll see it'll lay nice and flat. And that's how you continue the pattern. At the beginning of every row, you will want to put 2 beads on at a time. And like I said, that stitch method makes it so that you do not see any stitches on the outside of your dress whatsoever. So as you continue on, you will continue on to the next bridge, sliding your needle through, pulling it all the way, and going back up through that 1 bead. This is a method that I learned to do online on YouTube actually, and it's a great method for doing all sorts of different beading projects. And it's great using Fireline because when you're using Fireline, it actually helps hold the beads in place. It's quite nice. So you're going to continue on, and you're going to move on to the next few rows. Once we get to closer to the bottom of the dress, I will give a little bit more explanation. As you're getting further into your pattern, you'll notice that you will get to the end and you will be needing to put on 2 more whites and 1 more red. So following along with the pattern, making sure it's even on both sides. Starting at the end again, you will pick up 2 beads. On this row of the pattern, you have 2 red ones on the end. Again, going over to the second bridge, you will be pulling those beads through. As you pull on them, pull them nice and tight. You will go up the first red. You will go down the second red one, which is the one on the end, pulling all the way. And then you will go back up that first red one again, the one closest to the inner part of the dress. Now you've secured your 2 end beads with no threads showing on the outside. Now continuing the pattern, you will pick up a white bead. So you'll notice now on your pattern that we're actually starting our row 1 bead over. So here you're going to take your needle, you're going to go down the second red bead, pulling all the way through. Now you're going to put your needle back up through that same red bead, but you're going to push it through the center so that you're going up through the fire line. You'll feel the tension when you start pulling up, and you will notice that the thread is now coming out of the second bead. If for some reason it doesn't work the first time, try it a second time again. Now we're going to continue with the pattern with a red and a white bead. It's important to note that we're going over to the third bridge because your thread is now coming out of the second bead. So same method as before, 2 beads and going over to the second bridge, but because we have skipped a bead and a bridge, we are going over to the third bridge on this row. So same method, you're going to go up through the white bead, pulling all the way through. And then from there, you're going to go down through that end red bead, just that one bead, pulling all the way through, and back up through that white bead. And again, you have secured the end of your row, and you don't have to worry about any threads showing on the end. And if you ever have a bead that's sitting sideways, you can use your nail to flatten it out. Just give a little tug on the fire line there and make sure they're laying flat before you move on to the next bead. Otherwise, you'll end up with a sideways bead on your pattern. Keep on following the pattern that you have online in front of you from lilreddressproject.ca. and follow it until you get to the last row, and I will show you how to finish up from there and move up to the top of the dress. Okay, so we are now moving on to the last row on the bottom of the dress. If you'll notice on the pattern, it is a solid red row, but you'll also notice that it actually is one of those rows that moves over a bead. So again, we're going to go down the second red bead, pulling all the way through. When you put your needle back in through that same bead, try and find the center where the fire line is, pushing it so you feel tension on the needle. When you pull up, your fire line should be coming out of that second bead. If not, try again. You're going to pick up 2 red beads, and again, you're going to jump over to the third bridge because we've moved over 1 bead, going through the center of that bridge, and you're going to pull those red beads down, pulling. Again, the same method, go up the first red bead. Sorry about the blurriness. The first red bead there. Then you're going to go down the end bead, making sure that everything is laying nice and flat there, pulling all the way through, and then again back up that first red bead. And once you pull that up, just make sure both of your beads are lying nice and flat, and give it a little bit of a tug if you're feeling like it's a little loose. Again, just don't pull too tight because you don't want your dress to curl. So just a little tug there, pulling that red bead through, and continue on until the end of the dress there. Alright, now you can see we have the bottom of our dress complete. So now what you're going to want to do is take your needle and work your way back up to the top of the dress on either the right or the left side. It doesn't matter, either way what your preference of beading is. So I go up by 2 beads at a time when I can, trying not to push too hard through a bead. If it feels like it's not going to go through, don't push it too hard. I've broken many beads doing it that way. So just slowly go up if you need to, 1 bead at a time. As you can see, as you're following along with me, sometimes I go up 1 bead and then I'll go down. So I'm working my way across to the end of the dress. So there I am going down through a bead, wiggling it a little bit, trying to make sure I'm not breaking the bead, pulling tight, and then working my way up. My end goal is to work my way back up to that right hand corner where I'll be starting the rest of the pattern and working all the way up the rest of the dress. So following along, working your way up. You'll notice there's a little tail there. That was the tail that we had when we first started, and I will show you in a minute. All that I do with that is I clip it off. It's your preference. If you have some good beading scissors, you can cut that off, get it nice and close to the edge. Some people prefer to use toenail clippers because you can get them quite close as well. I have a pair of beading needles that I don't mind using on this kind of beadwork. It's a little bit different when it comes to fire line because it does have a wax coating on it. It is a fishing line. So cutting nice and close to the edge, just be careful you don't cut your beadwork. Unfortunately, I have done that before. So now you can see we have a finished bottom. Following along with the pattern, you will be then picking up a white bead first and then a red bead. And we will be continuing up the dress. I am going to fast forward a little bit. I'm just going to show you guys again, starting with the 2 bead method. Jump over to the second bridge, and when I come back on, we will have worked our way up to the belt of the dress. Now you keep on going up row by row. You'll notice that as you're going, it will get smaller and smaller. Once you get to 6 red beads wide, that is where you will be putting the belt on, and I will show you from there. And you'll notice in a minute here we're going to jump ahead in the film, and we're jumping to the point where we're now sitting at 6 red beads wide. So at this point we'll be adding on our white belt. You will notice that on the sides of your dresses you do not see any threads, and that is because we're using this method when you're picking up 2 beads at the beginning. So again, you're going to be attaching the same method that you've been doing this entire time. We're going to be putting on the white belt, and from there working our way up to the shoulders of the dress. So here we are, we're going to the next part of the dress. So you're going to pick up 2 red beads. Now this is the tricky part, we're going wider. So what you're doing is, instead of going over to the second bridge, you're sticking with the first bridge, pushing your needle through that first bridge, pulling all the way through. Same method as before, you're going to go up the first bead, down the second bead, the one closest to the end, and then you're going to go back up that first bead. The same way we've been doing it this entire time, but how you go wider is by starting on that first bridge rather than jumping to the second bridge. So you're going to continue on to the end, and when you get to the end again, you're going to be putting on 2 beads for that last bridge, but you're going to be doing them one at a time. So continue along here with me, and you will see what I'm talking about. So let's add on the rest of our red beads. Okay, so we've added on, as far as we can see, the last bead, but in fact we're putting 2 on the end. So you can see I'm pushing the needle through, and what I'm doing is I'm actually pushing it in between that red bead and that white bead. So I'm pushing it right through the center there. I'll pull it all the way through. Now this is tricky, you'll have to try it a couple times. You will notice that the bead needs just a little bit of moving to get it to lay flat on the end there. Pushing your needle up through it, it will lay flat and you will be wider on both sides. Now I know I showed it to you a little quickly there, but you'll get the hang of it if you keep on trying. I had to do my dresses a few times before I could get this method down. So again, picking up 2 beads for the next row, going through the first bridge. So this is how we're going to continue going wider at this point. Going through that first bridge, pull those 2 beads through. Again, the same method, going up through the first and down through the second, the one closest to the end, and back up again through that first one. Now continue on until you are on your 4th red row on the top of the dress. Follow along and you'll see where I mean. So you'll notice we are now on our 4th row, and if you follow along with the pattern online, you can see that this is the center of the V-neck of the dress. So we are putting on our red beads. You'll notice that there are 4 red beads before we put our white center bead on. So attaching those ones, double checking, we've got 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we put our white one in the center. And then after that, we continue on with 4 more red beads. Now, if you forget to add on a bead, you can take your needle off your thread and back the fire line back through and start again. And like I said, the first few times I tried this, I needed to do it a couple times before I got it down, and my beadwork was nice and tight. So we're adding on 4 more. I'm going a little bit out of camera there, only because I'm going a little bit quicker now. So adding them on, and the next row up we will be doing another 3 red and then 2 white in the center. Alright, so continuing on up this side of the dress, we are going to work our way to the part where we're going to start our separate shoulders. So here we are starting on a separate shoulder. You're going to have 2 red beads jumping over to the second bridge. Again, same method, tacking them down. The only thing is that because we are starting one side of the shoulders, you will now be going in the opposite direction as we were before. So here you're going to tack down another white bead, but the difference is that once you tack down this white bead, we are going to work our way to the right. So you will be picking up a white and a red bead to start. And as you will see as we go, you will be sharing one bridge with the 2 end beads. So here you're jumping over to the second bridge. You're going to tack down those beads. And because we're going in the opposite direction right now, you're going to slide through and you're going to go up through the red, back down through the white. And if you get tangled, just use your needle to give yourself a little flick of the fire line there to get it out and get it untangled. Once you get that completely untangled, then you can then go down the white bead, continuing the process to make sure that they're tacked down and flat. And again, back up the red bead, and you have now secured the beginning of that row. And like I said, you will be sharing one bridge for 2 beads for that end. So picking up a red bead, again the same method you were doing earlier, you're going to go through those 2 red beads on the end, feeling your way through the fire line. So there's tension there, you can feel it go through the fire line. Once you get that tension, pull your needle through. And once you pull it, your bead will be secured there on the end. If it's lying on its side, just use your nail to adjust it. And there you are, you have secured that part of the shoulder of the dress. Again, picking up 2 beads. Because we're working our way out, you're sharing the same bridge, going up the first red bead, down the second red bead. You can see how it's snugged in there when you pulled on the fire line. And then we are going back up that red bead and tacking on 1 more white bead. And then once we are finished doing that, we're going to work our way back down the dress with our needle. Same method that we did on the bottom of the dress, working our way up. Now we're going to work our way down over to the other side so we can do the other shoulder. So making sure everything is nice and secure there, secure that white bead down. Now going down either by 1, 2, or 3 beads, depending on how comfortable you are, making sure you're not putting too much pressure on the beads because you can break them. Slide your needle back down, and we are weaving our way back to the other shoulder, all the way to the other side. And you'll notice in a moment, once I work my way to the other side, I'll flip the dress over again. And that's because, again, I'm right-handed and I like to work from the right side. So I will flip it over so I'm doing my beadwork from the right. So working our way over, and we're almost done this dress. It looks fantastic, and when you get the hang of it, you can pick different colors and different patterns of how you would like to do the dress. So there you can see I flipped it over because I like working from the right, picking up 2 red beads, jumping over to that second bridge on this part of the dress, securing them. So up through the first, untangle myself there, down through the second, which is the one on the end, back up through the first, and then we're going to put our white bead on, and then the next 2 rows after this we are working our way to the right again. So again, our end 2 beads will be sharing 1 bridge. So secure this white one, and then we will be adding on another white and a red, jumping over to the second bridge. And then again, the end bead will be sharing the same bridge as the red bead. Continuing on, we are finishing up the last part of this shoulder of the dress. You will see that I am adding on another white and a red bead, and continuing on to the last, I guess there's 1, 2, 3, 4 more beads to go. Once we finish up, you'll see that I will take my thread or my fire line and I will work my way back down the dress. I will show you that in just a moment. So as you can see, we're just finishing up the last little bit of this dress. You can see how nice and flat it is. You can smooth it out with your fingers and flatten it on a desktop or wherever you're working to flatten it out. And you'll see I'm going to work my needle back down through the dress. And for me, in order to not have to tie a knot, what I do is I work my needle back down and then I loop back up onto one bead going back up, as you can see right there, and then I will work my way back down again, and that's just creating a little loop so that if the thread ever came loose, it would actually have to go through all of that to come undone. I have yet to have a single dress come undone. Fireline's really good at being sturdy and staying in place. So as you can see, I've gone down, back up, and down again. I'm going to clip my fireline off. And then it's completely optional if you want to afterwards put a thin layer of clear nail polish on the back of your dress. If you have any blemishes, if you accidentally skipped a bead and you can see thread on one side, that's the side that you can glue your back onto. So you can do one thin layer of nail polish, and then you can also use E6000 to glue down your pin back and enjoy your pin. We are now using magnets on the back of our pins as well for people who do not want to poke a hole in their clothing. So it's completely optional to you on what you would like to do to finish off your dress or how you would like to finish it off. We thank you very much for watching our video and supporting the Lil Red Dress Project.